Hello, it's me. Now I'm a bit late to the Diddy party, and we all know there ain't no party like a Diddy party. But I've been following it sort of vaguely, and it appears to me that from what we've heard so far, that as a music mogul, he's actually been um, very successful, and as an individual, really not very successful at all. So let's have a quick look at what ABC News has to say about this.
Hi, I'm Eva Pilgrim. Thanks for streaming with us. Incredibly graphic testimony today in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. And we have to warn you, some of what you hear may be disturbing. The third alleged victim, who goes by the pseudonym Jane, was back on the witness stand for her first full day of testimony. The prosecutor played an audio recording for the jury of a hotel night with a male prostitute Jane identified as Dawn. On the recording, Jane and Dawn are looking for a condom, but Combs didn't allow it and can be heard saying, quote, "You're taking that expletive." Jane testified, quote,
They just said they were looking for a condom. Oh, God. The things that you have to do for the rich and famous, eh?
"I just didn't want to disappoint my lover. He would be unhappy and wouldn't be satisfied with me." Jane went on to tearfully tell the jury about her birthday in 2023 when she said she was made to have sex with 3 different men in addition to Combs. The prosecutor asked why. Jane responded, "I don't know. It had become so routine," and added that she turned robotic. Jane told the jury that after
It's it's a real double-edged sword, isn't it? The fact that you're exposed to all this um, depravity by virtue of the fact that you've got cash, you've got money in your pocket, and you can do anything you want. You can be anything you want. You can see anyone you want, and you can anyone you want as well. So when you've got no borders, no walls, no barriers to seeking the things that you want, isn't it obvious that you're going to become a kind of depraved sexual individual? Isn't that just like if you follow that lifestyle and you those are your proclivities, that it's just going to become more of a snowball effect, no pun intended.
a while, Combs didn't have to directly ask her for these hotel nights. She testified, "I knew it was to be expected." Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges. If convicted, he faces the possibility of life in prison. Coming up, we have a former SDNY district court judge to give us some insight on what it's like to be in charge of such a high-profile case. Plus, we're taking you inside a courtroom identical to the one in this trial, so you can get a better sense of where this is all playing out. But we begin with ABC News Chief Investigative Correspondent Aaron Kotursky live outside the federal courthouse here in Manhattan. And Aaron, we heard from Jane today. What did she tell the jury?
This was a deeply unsettling day, Eva, because Jane outlined the sex that she said she was made to have with at least 11 different men. She saw photos of all of those men. She said she couldn't remember all their names, but she knew them as Leo or Michael or Paul. Paul, she said, was Sean Combs's trainer. And she said that she was made to have sex with these men in Turks and Caicos in New York.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh really, but this is just so absurd. I mean, we've got a bunch of people here who are moving in the highest sort of levels of, it's not quite right to say highest levels of society, but in those really rich sort of circles where if you believe what you hear conspiratorially about these people, they're as I said, there are no barriers. They can do pretty much what they want. So you're out there, you go in willingly because you want to be part of the whole scene, and then there's the whole sort of Sean Combs thing where you can, be paraded around hanging off his arm, and that's got its own. Let's be real, that's got its own cachet, isn't it? If you are seeing Sean P. Diddy Combs, he is a successful music mogul, and that has some currency attached to it. So that's useful to you as an individual if you're the woman doing this. So that makes total sense. And I don't have any problem thinking that if you have somebody who's a controlling personality like Sean Combs seems to have been, I think it's pretty clear, allegedly, then you're going to be on tenterhooks. You're going to be tiptoeing around him constantly because you're afraid of incurring the ire of this man who nobody says no to. So when you look at it from that point of view, it makes total sense that if she wants him to have sex with other men in a kind of sexual scene, if you like, a kind of fantasy thing, then that's another aspect of the controlling arm of what Combs does. He seems to ease these people in to whatever he wants them to do. But there must come a point where you just think to yourself, there are far too many dicks surrounding me here, and I've made some bad choices.
In Los Angeles, in Miami, and she said that it became so routine that she just became robotic. She knew what she had to wear. She knew that the baby oil would get all over her feet, make them sticky. She'd be unsteady. She talked about the soreness in her back from being made to be in one position all.
Not just the soreness in her back.
The time performing oral sex at Sean Combs' direction. She remembered the infections that she got and how she was not allowed ample time to heal before the next hotel night. And even the jury saw some of her anguished text messages telling Sean Combs that she couldn't do it anymore. And the jury heard his response in a voice note, his voice booming throughout the courtroom, where the response seemed unsympathetic, calling her crazy.
What was she like on the stand, Aaron?
So he's calling her crazy because she's not into the whole gang thing. He's just not interested, is he? He just wants to fulfill his own desires at any cost, effectively. And if you believe the stories that we've been told up until this point, his career has started off, and he was, the willing apprentice to that other chap who's in the music industry, his protege, I think. Is that the right word, protege? The guy basically coached him through it, a white chap. I can't remember his name right now. But an old guy, very powerful in the industry. And who's to say he didn't learn it off somebody who he was kind of like looking up to at the time? Oh, this is the way things are done in the music industry, that kind of thing. And so there's a very small avenue here for you to kind of feel a bit sorry for P. Diddy, in as much as he's just repeating parrot fashion the behavior that he's already seen. And if it fits into his personality type where he's very controlling and domineering, then it's a fait accompli, isn't it? He's just going to carry on doing that. And why should he stop if no one's telling him no? And let's be clear, there are real victims here, it appears. The people who are testifying here, I think, seem to be in the kind of situation where they started out enjoying it, and it very quickly went downhill. And in going downhill, they were placed in a situation that was irretrievably difficult for them. Because the king, Sean Combs, controlled everything. So let's listen on.
She sits there and is almost meek. She's not a meek-looking person. She's a presence. Her hair swept to one side. She was in sort of a magenta or more maroon, I guess, skirt suit. But her voice was so soft. And for much of her testimony, she was sobbing audibly. She needed to pause to dab her eyes. Her sniffles were right into the microphone, so they were quite loud and really punctuated the difficulty of her testimony.
The jurors were shown photos of Jane with various men during those hotel nights. How did they react to seeing those pictures?
This wasn't the first sexually explicit material that the jury had seen, but you couldn't help but be almost heartbroken for what she said she was put through. And I think that showed on some of the jurors' faces as she talked about the sheer repetitiveness and how she was made to dress and what she was made to do each and every time. But as the afternoon wore on, I think the jury, I'm not sure they became inured, but their reaction, they listened, but they did not show as much of a visual reaction, especially when there were these lengthy text exchanges that Jane was made to read. And her notes, before she would text Sean Combs, she said she would gather her thoughts by taking notes on her phone, and prosecutors made her read those as if to corroborate her feelings.
Jane also discussed a hotel night that happened in July 2024. Why is that timeline detail important here?
There were just so many dicks.
There was one in July 2024. She also said the last one she remembered was in August 2024. And so that shows that just weeks before his arrest in September 2024, Sean Combs was engaging in the kind of behavior for which he was under a federal investigation. And Jane said it persisted throughout their 3-year relationship, such that 90% of the time they were together, she was involved in having sex with other men.
What was Combs' reaction to all of this today?
He was listening intently and following along with glasses on to read some of the text messages, hers and his. And of course, he listened to his own voice as it echoed around the courtroom, the voice note messages that he left her saying that he didn't want to do.
You can't help but think that when somewhere inside P. Diddy, as he's there with his greying hair now in the courtroom, because he's not dyeing his hair because he's in jail effectively, with glasses, looking very sort of grandfatherly and studious, I'm sure. As he listened to his own voice, he was thinking, yeah, baby. He's that kind of personality. He sat there, and with everything that we're hearing being thrown at him, he still has this sense of righteousness, that he's like, well, the system let me do it, so I did it. And is he wrong? Would you?
This with her anymore, saying that she was being dramatic or confronting him about sex. But Jane also talked about how Sean Combs paid for her teeth, new veneers, because he didn't like her teeth, and paid her $10,000 a month rent, which she said he seemed to hover over her and always brought it up so that she was reminded that he was paying the rent. It made her feel obligated, she said, to perform in these hotel nights. And at one point, Combs kind of winced a little bit. Remember, though, he's not supposed to show facial expressions because the judge said that could get him kicked out of court.
Aaron Koczorski for us there at the courthouse. Aaron, thank you so much. And here now to break down the testimony from today is ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer.
What a mess. What a mess. He's built a kingdom for himself that he ruled over with an iron fist, no pun intended. And where's it gotten him in the end? Where's it gotten him in the end? I mean, I personally think, in a very conspiratorial vein, that he was protected, and he may even have been an asset. I've done a bit of research in this area, and he fits the bill. Unusually, though, in recent years, most of the assets that are rumored to be out there, hidden in plain sight, so to speak, are women, are wives of men in positions of power. So to have Diddy being exposed in this fashion, assuming he is an asset, in my opinion, it's quite unusual. It's quite unusual. And will he testify?
You heard from Jane on the stand. What stood out to you about her testimony today?
I mean, just a few things. I mean, Aaron talks about that $10,000. They found out that Sean Combs is supposedly still paying that $10,000 a month. But there were other things where she would talk about the sexual abuse and as well as these debaucherous nights or hotel nights, because she doesn't refer to them as freak-offs. And you would get to the point where she would be told to have sexual intercourse with a male escort, and she said that, well, I didn't want to do it because he wasn't attractive, and then go into a room with Sean Combs, and there would be a conversation, and he would look disappointed, but ultimately would say that person can go, only to get another person to come in. And so for me, I was kind of two minds. One, Sean Combs, at least in this instance, is not showing the violence and aggression that we saw in
There's just no
Cassie's
stopping
testimony.
him.
But here, he's still saying, well, it's still going to happen, just not with the person that you're choosing. I think both sides are going to be able to use that fact however they want to.
That's sexual slavery, isn't it?
It's going to be very interesting when cross-examination comes up on those points.
We've also heard testimony about drugs in this case. Jane talked about it today. How does what we heard from her play into the charges here?
So I know a lot of the time we're talking about the freak-offs, the hotel nights, the debauchery, whatever you want to call it. And that's a big part of the RICO conspiracy. But there are a lot of underlying charges as well involving drug sale and drug use across state lines that if any one of those predicate acts are used in a form of trying to find Sean Combs guilty, he can be found guilty maybe not of the freak-offs, but of providing drugs and selling drugs to the people who are participating in it. So I think it's a strong point to make nonetheless, even if, let's say, the jury, for whatever reason, doesn't believe Cassie, Mia, and Jane.
Jane testified today, and you mentioned that he's still paying.
How can you not believe these women, really? I mean, if he's got like 5 women up there who are testifying against, so I don't know how many it's going to be by the time we're done, but let's say it's 5. Are they all gold diggers? Because Cassie Ventura already got paid off once, and she can't get paid off again, I think, because she's like done and dusted in the eyes of the law, I think, maybe.
The $10,000 for her house, that money played a role in her decision to stay. Why does that matter in this case?
Because that's what the government is hanging their hat on when it comes to the sex trafficking. Don't forget, sex trafficking is through force, fraud, or coercion. The coercion, I think, is what they're attaching it to. But the numbers really played out in my mind, because my understanding is she started dating Sean Combs in 2021. There was a lease agreement that we saw that was signed on April 4th of 2023. And then months after that, there were messages about not wanting to participate in these hotel nights. I think that timeline, as well as where she might have been living with her child beforehand, the fact that she said she wanted a big home and a big yard for her child, I know is going to come up again against cross-examination and asking the question of, could there have been alternative resources for this home, and you merely just wanted to live with Sean Combs, not wanting to do something else?
So Jane also showed receipts today as well. What were these receipts for? What's the significance of them here?
All right, so
baby oil, butt plugs, other assorted paraphernalia.
When we talk about receipts, the receipts were about the repayment of some of these flights for the sex workers or the entertainers that she would put on her own car, the flight to go from Atlanta, for example, to New York, where they may be, and then making sure they were taken care of by leaving money downstairs. Sometimes she would pay it on her own directly and then get reimbursed with Sean Combs. And some of those payments and receipts show that Sean Combs is still in one way, shape, or form, directly or indirectly, participating in this racketeering conspiracy.
Okay, and you mentioned this person that she was choosing and not choosing. That person she was flying back and forth was someone she told the jury that she chose. Why does that matter here?
So why it matters is because you know you're going to hear it when the defense takes a stand or has an opportunity to cross-examine Jane and say, well, you chose to do this in the same way that we heard with Cassie as well. But here we're going to see that she says she felt pressure to do so, that she chose.
That's not a good statement, is it, at all? I said if we're going to be doing this, I should just choose who was going to be doing this to my body. Fair enough, you'd think, wouldn't you?
She figured, if I'm going to participate in this, I might as well participate with people that I know and I feel safe with. And I think getting ahead of that and making that statement rather than having Combs' attorney attack her for that was a smart move by the defense.
Though in all fairness, she probably doesn't know enough men to satisfy Combs' desire to see it with other men.
What did those messages say?
All right, so here we have a couple of examples of the text messages here, and it really highlighted the point in one sense that she wanted to participate. And she explained those text messages saying, well, I wanted to keep it alive. I wanted to keep the intimacy going because I know that's what he wanted. Again, what he wanted, not necessarily about violence attributed to it, but also talking about she wanted the getaway. She wanted to spend time with him. He promised that. I think there might be an argument about fraud there, that he promised these getaways, promised he's traveling, promised all of this, but it always got veered back into these hotel nights, these debaucheries. And so what she wanted, a relationship. What she got, sex work in a sense.
Brian, thank you so much for being here with us. And still ahead, we take you inside the courthouse.
It's fascinating in the worst possible way. It's like rubbernecking a car accident. You're not supposed to look, but you do. It's just the way it is, you know. And so how do you make sense of this, really? From a working class person like I am, you know, you get up in the morning, you do your bit, then you come home at night, you go to the shops, you talk to your family. It's just the usual stuff. The news is on the TV. The life these people lead is almost fantastical. And yet it illustrates, it shows how just dirty everything is, how grubby things can be. That all that money and all that glamour, we see these pictures of Diddy and Cassie Ventura, for instance, together. She's an utterly beautiful woman. Very symmetrical face, great skin, lovely smile. And it's all just so grubby. So grubby. Anyway, that's all for now. So this is me signing off. Until next time, look after yourselves.